Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to a new HCS season, and welcome back to the narrative. That's right, you can't get rid of us that easily. We are back for a new season, discussing everything to do with the Halo Championship Series and the upcoming events. We've got a new season. We've got a little bit of a new show format as well, and we are very excited to jump in. Now, myself, Onset, would not be able to do this alone. We've got Andy Dudinsky, Bravo, with us. Brav, how you doing, brother?
I'm great, man. Great to be back for another season. It's crazy that we get to say it again, but I dare say that the storylines have somehow, with the off-season that we had, have gotten even spicier, and we are teed up for one hell of a year.
We certainly are, indeed. Who would have thought it, right at the end of our season, what we'd be going into this year? Now, one thing, most notably, we have given in. The narrative previously was explicitly not a podcast, as you may have heard and seen us say many, many times. But Bid Podcast has had its way, and now we are a podcast, officially. We are
definitely
putting our hands up. We admit it. We are a podcast. We are available on all audio platforms, as well as YouTube still. Episode will drop before every event this season. It's going to be a good time, Andy. We still get to discuss some really cool stuff ahead of the events.
Yep, and we're going to miss the video format too, but we're excited to be able to bring you another season of episodes, and of course, bringing you another episode before each and every event of the season. So let's do it. Let's get underway.
Let's do it. The OpTic Halo Major kicks off this week. It has come around very, very quickly, hasn't it?
It has.
And we've got a lot of stories to dive into. We'll keep you up to date of everything that's happened in the build-up. And the first thing that happened in the build-up, we were very lucky to be able to cast and host and do all of the work and watch, most importantly, the Kaysan Showdown that went down about a couple of weeks ago now. An amazing event, an amazing preview and table setup for the series. We had some incredible series. And Andy, I think the takeaway from that event is that Shopify and OpTic have further cemented their online presence, that they're a little bit ahead of the pack, and there is a serious big rivalry already there to kick the year off.
There really is. It's been amazing to see it kind of play out so far. It was, as you say, cemented, confirmed on LAN, and probably couldn't, be any closer between those two. We'll get into how those series went in just a bit, but I also got to say, I also loved and was so impressed by, first of all, it was amazing to have some of the players joining us on the couch, specifically to have Royal 2 join us for an entire series, not only to have his insight in the casting booth, but also to hear what he and other players said about the year. And I think as fans, we're all wondering, with the amount of shakeups in the offseason, we won't run you through them because if you're listening to this show, you're probably well aware of just how everything has transpired, but it was amazing to hear. We suspected that the players would realize there's a lot on the line here, and maybe almost more than ever before, and certainly than the past few years. And it was amazing to hear Royal 2 say, and he meant it, I feel like I'm an amateur player again, and I have to prove myself. It is truly a special time when you have players like him saying things like that.
Yeah, it's no longer teams just battling against each other. It's players trying to remind everyone how good they are with all these new rosters that's gone together. So it's going to be an amazing watch. We also had Lucid joining us on the couch as well. It's fascinating insight into the heads of the SSG lot at the moment, where he was saying, watch this space for our performances. The highs are incredibly high. I think he said something like it's poetry, something along those lines. I'm not quoting verbatim here, but when it's working, but also when it's not working, not good. Not good at all. So really interesting to see where their heads at, but a lot of confidence, it sounded like, from Lucid as well. And there was a real steely determination, I think, about how he's talking to us about SSG and what we can expect for them moving forward as well.
Yeah, I tell you what, that really stuck with me. Because we've had a lot of time spent with Tommy, whether it's at events, talking to him before or after a series, whether we're at kind of big dinners together. We spent a lot of time around Lucid, and I have never seen him take that tone. He is normally hair kind of perfectly blowing in the wind and a big smile on his face. And you could tell there was, as he told us, he was like, listen, you have to, like, as you said, watch this space. What this team can do, right? The ceiling is so high. And he said it with as you say, a steely determination, but also this like frustration, and almost this like impatience to show people what he means. And I think, for lack of a better word, he looked pissed off, and also, as you say, very determined, very confident that he would bring these things to light and that people would know. So that has stuck with me because I've never seen him take that tone about anything. So to do that live on broadcast, I think it was pretty special to watch. And that along with Royal 2's comments, they both hit me quite a bit in like oh shit, there is indeed a lot on the line this year.
You know what Lucid's tone reminded me of is when like someone might be talking to you and you're not really paying attention. They go, look at me when I'm talking to you. There's like that
Literally,
kind of
exactly
that feel. Like, you know what I mean? He was saying that to the Halo community, and I think a lot of people who maybe have cast some doubt towards what SSG can do. But I want to give a shout out to the couch as well, Andy. I think it's only right. The couch was amazing. Not only comfortable supporting us for 12 hours, whatever it was that we were sat on it, but the ability to have the players come and join us. There was this kind of relaxed atmosphere that we love and we've always wanted to kind of share with everybody. When it came to not only casting the games, but just involving everyone. We wanted you to feel like you were there with us. And it just sitting on a couch really allowed us to do that.
It really did. I think it's funny. We should mention to people too, because Mark and I, over the years, as we've tried to make our casts better and better each series, each year, we've often said to each other that the best way that we can cast this game as if we were sitting on a couch together with a room full of our best friends. And how would we, and Halo fans, of course, and how would we talk about the game? And we try to bring that into the casting booth. So to have a literal couch this time, I think allowed us to like tap into that even more. And I hope everyone really enjoyed the show, because we certainly did.
Yeah, shout out to everyone who joined us for interviews as well, the players. It was great to speak to you guys. And hopefully we can do a little bit more of that this season as well. You can get a little bit more of an insight from the players. Right, let's get down to business a little bit here. Let's talk about the top 4 from the Kaysan Showdown and the top 4 going into the OpTic Major, the first event of the year. The number 1 seed we should talk about first, Shopify Rebellion. Without a doubt, the team to beat. And I think even though when you look back at the result, and obviously they were first place, they took home the win, split games across the land with OpTic Gaming overall. It was very, very good. It could not have been closer between the two teams. But one thing I really want to highlight, Andy, is how comfortable Frosty looked. Yeah. That looked like the Frosty that had just joined CLG back in Halo 5, who was allowed to just do what he wanted. Give him the sniper rifle, give him the power weapons, let him be Frosty, let him be comfortable. And I tell you what, he looked like his old self.
He really did. He looked so comfortable and so confident, and I think it really showed. When he's firing on all cylinders, that team looks unstoppable. And I think we got to see, there was no doubts of, is Frosty here this season, right? It's like, oh, okay, this man is ready to go. And he had similar comments too about how excited he was to kind of remind people what he's capable of. Also amazed at how fast the chemistry has developed on this team. One thing I remember a few months ago, I was with some of the crew and Frosty was there, and someone was asking, someone who kind of was, tangentially part of the Halo community but wasn't keeping up with the off-season drama, asked who Frosty was playing with. And I remember him looking at the person, he said, it's a guy called It's the Last Shot. And we know from last year that Last Shot really prefers to just be called Last Shot. And that's what it hit me. I was like, oh shit, these guys really don't know each other yet. Yeah. They are just not only learning how to play together, but also getting to know each other.
Each other's names.
Each other, yeah, the actual preferred gamer tag. And I think that was kind of an indication for me. But then if you fast forward to today, right, these guys have picked things up in terms of being on the same page so quick. As you said, tied 6-6 in games with OpTic, which I think is actually the best way we could have had things unresolved going into the major. A few game type highlights that I want to go through for the side of Shopify from the Kaysan Showdown. I think most notably, they were only 4-3 in Slayers, with a blowout win and a blowout loss. So Slayers are very close. We'll talk about OpTic Slayers in a minute. Shopify also went undefeated in several game types, specifically Bomb against OpTic, right? They went 2-0 against OpTic and Bomb, which we know is a game type that OpTic has said they need to work on. Also, not only undefeated in Strongholds, but also it was their best game type with blowout wins over both SSG and OpTic. So what I'm getting at there is there's already a few game type outliers for a few of these teams, and because we have several new map game type combinations in the game type suite, those are something that we're going to be looking at even closer, because you've got 4 brand new rosters, you've got new game types, and those are really going to matter with where these teams are at in these first few events. I think by mid-season, kinks are maybe going to work themselves out, but Shopify definitely pulling away in a few of those game types.
You know, another thing I loved about Shopify, and not just their performance, but this is something that I asked Royal 2 in the interview. Actually, I asked every single player. there was a moment where they were down in that series in the final, and somebody walked back into the room and everyone just started laughing, even though they just lost the game. You remember that vibe, that's someone there to just pick them up. And I feel like for Shopify, that's a really good sign, knowing that when you're down in the series, you're not looking at each other for who got some things wrong. It's that, like, look forward. Okay, I'm looking forward to playing you guys again. Let's bring this back.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important, almost intangible value that you get from just personalities clicking together as humans, not just as people in game. So I love that from Shopify, and I think it's a really, really good base for them to build some success off.
Yeah, and I think also they're probably, if we think of the past few years of competitive Halo, they're probably the vibiest number 1 seed, right? Like, I think if someone isn't an OpTic fan for any reason, I have a good feeling they're going to be Shopify fans, right? There's a lot to like about this team, and I think if you maybe come in as a Lucid fan, a Snakebite fan, etc., you might find your allegiance elsewhere, but these are just a vibey squads of dudes, and there's a lot to like.
Yeah, apart from Cycle's interview where he just said type shit, I'm holding him accountable
I know you didn't
for that one.
I know you didn't like that one, yeah.
We'll give him a chance to redeem himself maybe at the event. Let's talk about OpTic Gaming then. Second place. Going to pause for a second because it was second place again, even though we did see maybe some comments about format and things like that after the event.
Yep.
We mentioned that they split games. Those comments were fun, though, weren't they? They were fun.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a clear, and also you heard him during the OpTic Halo podcast as well. It's a clear chip on their shoulder, and I think they are handling it well. Right? Formal said, "I'm not losing sleep over it," but you can tell, right? It's got to be frustrating for them to have won the upper bracket final the way they did in a reverse sweep, and to have split games, but then to come away, in second place. And the format's the format, right? That is what it is. However, it is definitely something that I think has only added more spice to this first event, to the whole rivalry. And if OpTic were to win, whether it's a series or the event, I think it would be loud, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, just think about how important that winners bracket final could be if it's Shopify OpTic as well. And then having the advantage of how close they are. It's massive. We always talk about how massive it is. But there are a few things to talk about with OpTic here. And listening to the OpTic podcast again, if you haven't heard it, go check it out. Formal talking about a couple of game types that they lost early in the final that he quite simply said we're bad at. And you mentioned, Shopify had some outliers of good game types where it seems like OpTic have got some work to do on some as well.
Yeah, they do. I think specifically the ones that OpTic called out were essentially all the new game types, and also that recharge strongholds that they lost in the first set. But specifically, they were pointing at the new game types. I think they're looking at it correctly. They're saying that loss gives them an opportunity to dig even deeper and improve on those game types. I think importantly for OpTic, their Slayers are looking much better. But you could still see like the residue of the kind of work required in Slayers at the Kaysan Invitational, because it felt like they were constantly playing catch up. There was one game where they were trailing by 10, one where they were trailing by 14, and I think even in while we were casting, Mark, it felt like if only OpTic didn't have to climb out of an 8-kill hole here, they probably would be doing okay, even though they did it several times. So I think that they were really proud of their resilience in certain situations, especially those tough Slayers. I think the big takeaway, and this is cool, I think we already mentioned it for Lucid as well, but there's a lot of teams that are suggesting and very clearly stating that they are nowhere close to their potential, which is an exciting place to be when you think about how these teams are lining up right now.
Yeah, I think we saw flashes of brilliance from all of the players that were on in that final, I should say. And I think knowing that there's still more to come from all of them, and I think when the teamwork starts to just feel a little bit more comfortable for a lot of these players, again, a lot of these players may not have played together before. Some of them haven't played together before in these big squads that we're talking about. It's going to take time to understand how your teammates react to different situations, and that just sets us up. Again, if you think the series has been great so far, it means they're going to get even better as we move throughout the season. And I think our takeaway from not only the preseason and the Kaysan event that we had is that the rivalry, Andy, is heated between these two teams. You saw Legends pop off after they reverse swept. You saw the reaction of Shopify when they won that final, and you saw the reaction of OpTic as well. Like, God, devastated, pissed.
Yeah.
Like, it's a different kind of feeling, this rivalry, where it feels like it's not just we want to win because we want to win and beat you. It's like we want to beat you because there's some bad blood there.
There is, and I would say I cannot remember in the last few years when we've had new teams with a rivalry that was kind of this heated and clear already, and also just like so, as we said, just so evenly matched with the way they've been splitting games, not just online and scrims, but also for their first debut on LAN as well. Yeah, can't wait to see it play out.
Reminds me a little bit of the OpTic Envy Halo 5 rivalry we had.
I agree. There's a certain weight to this one, where it's just like so clear right off the bat for so many reasons.
All right, next up, let's talk about the team who are third seeded for this event, but came fourth in the Kaysan event that we had in the build-up, and that's going to be the new look FaZe clan. Wasn't a great performance from them at the Kaysan event. They had some close games with OpTic and SSG, with the exception of one Slayer, but I feel like coming out of that event, it felt like they were clearly behind the pace of the three teams who finished in front of them.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we saw close games with OpTic. We saw close games with SSG. However, the results have to speak for themselves. And I think this OpTic major is kind of going to be their chance to put a stake in the ground. There's been, I think they're going to be happy to be coming in with a third seed. And I think it'll be kind of not only give them good opportunities in pools to put a stake in the ground, but hopefully also just the confidence that they need to put together a performance, I would say, that is representative and deserving of the four players that you have on this team. I think that just like every other squad, they're going to continue to find their chemistry, find their footing across these game types. And I think one big question that you and I had is which players are going to step up to kind of get dirty work and support things done. We know what Penguin's capable of in that category, but how do they make sure that everything gets done on the map? As you said, I think at Kaysan they left some things to be desired with how those series went. But I do think if we look at the individual game scores, if you're a FaZe fan and a fan of these players, if you look at those, you're not as concerned as you would be if you just looked at the series score and the placing. So I think they have a fantastic base from which to build. But I do think they need to take if we look at kind of their pool play Friday, I think they need to take every single match quite seriously, right? They've got some big matchups there. They will have that TSM matchup, and it will be kind of guns blazing right away. So it's a big opportunity for them to say, hey, we're here. We are not just, we're not just one of the top teams here, that they are ideally, if you're on that squad, not just top three, but challenging for top two. And that'll be the question. Yeah,
I think, the focus for FaZe has got to be to make a final, I think, in this season. I think they won't be happy just constantly watching other teams take that spot. Right. I think that's what they're going to be aiming for, because if you're in that final, you got a chance of winning the thing. And I think for FaZe, that's what's expected as an organization, but also from those players. You get world champions. You got Trippy on that team. Penguins won events. There's players on the team who know how to get the job done. And I think for FaZe, it's about putting it together and putting a run together and showing, I think, just being aggressive. Just don't show anyone respect. Just go out there, think you're better than everyone, and try and prove it. And I think if FaZe do that, that's where they'll have some success.
I agree. And I think just to illustrate kind of the closeness of the games, if people didn't get a chance to see the earlier matches, just to walk you through a few, they lost 3-1 to OpTic and 3-1 to FaZe. However, those included, the
grindiest Aquarius win of all time.
Oh,
do you remember
gosh.
That one? The 1-0.
Which, by the way,
normally I wouldn't say this. Go back and watch the Kaysan event. It was amazing front to back. Maybe skip the aqua flag, because that wasn't a great one.
Yeah, it was. That was interesting. I think there's a lot actually probably for OpTic to learn from that. If there's any takeaways, right? It's like that's probably something that they've spent time in on the VOD. But I think it's worth noting that they were able to somehow squeak that out, which is not easy to do against a team like OpTic. But also they only lost Recharge. This is the OpTic series. They only lost Recharge Ball 2-1. The Origin Slayer was a 50-47. And the Live Fire, not as close, but still 250-218. And I think if we look at their match where they were eliminated, their lower bracket semifinal against SSG, that was a 2-1 Forbidden Flag loss. A huge blowout Slayer win, 50-31 on a Recharge Slayer. And they only lost Aqua Bomb and Live Fire Ball by 1. So I think despite the result, if you're on FaZe, I think you can look at each of those games, and with the scores that I just outlined, in many of those cases, right, the difference could have been, right, 1-2 for deads, right, 1-2 Slayer rotations
winnable
exactly
games.
can sway those. So I think it's an exciting an exciting opportunity for them to right a few of those wrongs and see where they can land here.
Okay, let's move on to the team who came third at the Kaysan event, but they are 4th seed coming into this event, and it's Space Station Gaming. I'm fascinated by this roster. Not just what we have seen, but what we could see. When things click, Team Scary, you heard it from Lucid. We've seen it ourselves. Scrims have started to improve as well, scores in that. We've seen some recent scrims against Shopify and OpTic where they've looked a lot better. Mm-hmm. And I think this is always going to be a team where you were looking at time in equals results out. There's a lot of work to be done for a lot of players who haven't teamed with each other before. To get on the same page is something that we've heard 1,000 times from Snakebite, Lucid, Eco, Stella. They all know they've got to get on the same page. But is this event here quick enough? Do you feel? Has there been enough time between the Kaysan Showdown and the OpTic Major, the first event of the season, for them to have done that work to get on the same page, to be in contention to win a championship? I think that's what everybody's wondering now, because it felt like the Kaysan was a kind of a benchmark for what SSG, I think, where everyone felt they were. Off the pace when it came to Shopify, lost pretty comfortably in both of those, didn't take a game off of them. 3-1 win over FaZe, relatively close games though, like you mentioned previously when we were talking about FaZe. And they didn't play OpTic, so we don't have any data on how they perform against OpTic on LAN. It is one of the most... Everyone's looking at the top 2 at the moment, the fascinating series we have between those, but just SSG as a team, as a squad, is just fascinating to me to see where they go and what happens next. Yeah,
exactly. You cannot... It goes without saying, you cannot sleep on these guys. I think they haven't had the results they wanted. I think to be 3-0'd twice by Shopify and not be able to play OpTic gives us very limited data from the Kaysan Showdown, which I think is also exciting because there are variables and there are unknowns here between those matchups on LAN. I don't think, if you look at 2 weeks of total time since Kaysan, it's not a lot of time. And I think that specifically what they probably would have been looking at is going to be game type specific, and kind of looking at what happened in those games that were not really that close between the Shopify series that they needed to work on. Is it a matchup thing? There'll be a lot of VOD review. And I think even looking at the FaZe series and asking why some of those games were close. I think what's amazing about the SSG story is, if you look at the 4 names on this team, without a doubt, they could steal the entire year, right?
Or world champions.
Exactly. They could. This could be the story. Once again, another SSG org win, but it could be the story of these 4 players. Everyone on this team has won a world championship, and they know what's required to do it. And it's going to be fantastic to see how they debut here. I think one question for me is, if we think about the players on this team. If you look at Snakebite and Lucid, they've both been vocal leaders, and they actually have a pretty similar style of, I would say, leadership and even demeanor and tone and attitude. I think that could even be extended to Eco and Stellar. Anyone who's spent time around any of these 4 knows what I mean, or even seen them in post-game interviews. They are stoic. They let their play do the talking, but they're also not trash talkers, and they're not known, with the exception of an occasional Lucid Eco moment, maybe, not really popping off. And I'm wondering, would this team benefit if there was someone who, got a bit more hype than their average hype level? Or maybe they don't need it. That's something that yet to be seen, but definitely something I'm going to keep an eye on, because if you look at OpTic and Shopify, they've got players, who will pop up, who will stand up, who will scream in your face. It's to be seen if SSG needs something like that, or if they will kind of slowly but surely start to dominate this league.
I wonder if Element will take up some of that slack. Historically, he's been someone who gets very, very loud when he's been on that main stage himself, playing in big series, and I think he could be someone who takes that, maybe weights, not quite the right word to use here, but can inject that into the team.
No, I think you're right. I mean, especially as someone
let everyone else feel comfortable.
And that's a big role of the coach, is to identify those, not just communication gaps in terms of the comms themselves, but the actual how the team is feeling and firing. I think you're absolutely right. It's a great point. And when I was looking at the 4 names, it's not something I had been considering as much as I should have. So, yeah, great point from you.
Eyes on Elamite. Ooh, what's he going to bring to the table? Is he going to be screaming from day one, game one? Hopefully, because that's be fun to watch. Let's talk about the best of the rest then, Andy. We've talked about the big four going into this event, the top 4 seeds. Who are you picking? Because we've talked about from what feels like seed 5 down to 12. Good luck predicting that. It feels like everybody is very, very close. And there's a couple of teams who may be slightly ahead of the pack, but again, you look at a series between them and you would imagine the teams we're talking about, like the TSMs, who we feel at the top of that pack versus a team a little bit further down. You still feel like the series is going to be very close, maybe a 3-2 either way. So who are you looking at as the best of the rest to perform in Arlington?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of teams to look at. A lot of people have already been talking about how hyped that Pool Play Friday is. For me, I'm going to say LG. They have earned themselves the 5th seed through the qualifier, which is a big deal. You even saw Piggy kind of taking to Twitter saying he was feeling slighted that they're not going to have their 4th versus 5th seed. That's SSG versus LG on the main stage. So for me, that's a good bit of confidence from him and the team and saying, this is a match to watch. And yeah, I'm still excited, of course, about the complexity of the TSM matches. But I think for me, I'm excited to see what LG can do. Can they prove to everyone that they're knocking on the door?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We know a lot of what to expect from some of these other teams when it comes to history and things. But LG have just got this little bit of, they come in with a great seed. There's a little bit of the unknown about some of the players and how they'll perform. I think it's a really interesting watch for sure for Luminosity. So keep your eyes on LG for sure. I'm going with Nemesis. And nice. Surprise, surprise, who would have thought that, right? The guy with the English accent picks the European team. But there is good reason for it. This team, if you're wondering who the team now comprises of, if you haven't been keeping up to date with the European scene, this is the Quadrant lineup of last year under a new brand, new banner, without Seeker and with Wootum joining them. Now, everybody in North America should by now know what Wootum did last year and how he stood out as a mouse and keyboard player, and not just that, it was more the fact that he was one of the leading damage players in a lobby every time that we saw him. So they've added that damage dealer to the squad. They've been out in the US and they've been boot camping this week and the week previous before the event as well. They've had some really encouraging scrims against the biggest teams, against OpTic, Shopify Rebellion, FaZe, very close series, very close games. And I think that will help them build confidence massively going into this event. And I think also maybe makes the likes of an SSG or a FaZe very wary of playing a team like Nemesis if they were to meet in the bracket, because this was a happy hunting ground for them, the OpTic arena last time, a few years ago. And I think that they're certainly going to feel comfortable should they go up against them. And they play OpTic in pools, if I'm not mistaken, as well.
They do.
And I'll let you talk about that because there's some history there as well.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. You've got some history there, and I think the players on Nemesis are going to welcome that opportunity to continue writing that story. And I think for OpTic, it's a chance to kind of do a little bit of history correction of what happens to their squad in their own building. This is not just a kind of an opportunity to say, all right, this is our house for this event, and maybe also say that this is also going to be their year.
Also, this is the arena where Wootum had the famous picture holding up his keyboard. Yep. Highest ever placing mouse and keyboard player. All right, this is something we wanted to include everybody who's been listening. Thank you for getting to this point. We're going to have a couple of questions posed to not only ourselves, but to you as a Halo community. We'd like to get your feedback and what you think on this as well. We'll start off with this question, which I posed to you first, Andy. Pick a player who you think will be the most influential in who wins this event.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic question. I think there's a lot of ways to attack it. And for me, I am going to say Formal, but not because I think he's an X Factor player. I think he's actually the opposite of an X Factor. You're always going to get a kind of a guaranteed consistency out of Formal. But for me, it's if we see Formal on 110%, 120%, and just absolutely dominating as we have seen him do before, then I think it makes OpTic not just formidable, but almost impossible to beat. So he's kind of a player who I don't think the tournament hinges on, but however, if he goes full kind of God mode, that it would be the most influential to them winning the event.
Yeah, I feel like if Formal does what he does best, all the other three members in OpTic have very easy games comparatively. He just makes it so much easier for everyone else to perform with the damage that he outputs. So you've got your eyes on OpTic Gaming's Formor. I am going with Shopify Rebellion's Frosty. And my reasons are, not only did he look like the best player we've been talking about for the last however long he's competed at the Kaysan Showdown, but there was a comfort about the way that he was playing. There was a trust from his teammates to give him every single sniper rifle. And I think the thing with Frosty is if he performs like that, he shuts down so many players so quickly that Shopify Rebellion can get this momentum going. And I think for Frosty and Shopify Rebellion to win this event, Frosty needs to be at his best once more. I think if he falls off a little bit, has some quiet games, they don't get control of those power weapons and let him go to work, they might have a bit more of a hard time to what we saw previously. So my eyes go towards Frosty and Shopify Rebellion if they want to win this event.
I agree. I feel like, and it's nothing of a mark against him, but I do feel like Frosty is a bit more X-factory in terms of, right, if you have a little bit more swings in terms of just how influential he might be to Shopify winning. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I think he's a pop-off player, and when he does, Shopify feed off that. Yeah. So I think Frosty, for me, is going to be the person I'm keeping my eyes on. All right, the next question. We're doing well. I'm speeding up. Look at me go. This is not only to you, Andy, but of course to everyone. If you're in the YouTube comments, give us your opinion on this. Pick a player who you feel career hinges upon this season. So how they perform this season is how they will be remembered and how that could change due to their performance.
And even their trajectory from here.
Yes.
I am going to say Last Shot, actually, but not for the reasons that one might expect, kind of based on the criteria of the question. And I say it because I feel like we already saw what Last Shot did last year. He put out the tweet that said, "I promise you don't want it as badly as I do." He did the thing, amazing placements throughout the year, and now look at the team that he has found himself on, and look at the seed. For me, I think if they were to place all over the top 3 and even top 4 this year, he will still be remembered relatively similar to where he is right now, right? Top tier player, great prospects on teams, promising career. However, I think the reason that his career trajectory hinges on this season is because if he were to instead come in and dominate the year, rack up a bunch of first places, potentially a world championship, then all of a sudden, right, he's one of the hottest players in the game, and we'll have even better prospects, even more notoriety and respect, and would become part of a very elite crew of some of the best to ever do it. He hasn't earned that yet, so that's why I think that this season he has a lot hinging on this year.
I like your take on that. I like it a lot. Eyes on Last Shot for you, and how at the end, when the final bullet is fired at the Halo World Championships 2025, he will be remembered, and what is next for Last Shot.
What about you?
I'm going with Lucid. Almost for like the reverse reasons, right? It's won a world championship, won multiple tournaments, was the poster boy of Halo Infinite. Everyone in year 1 was saying he's the best player in the game. Year 2, probably saying the same things. Last year, a lot of second places. This year, will it be back up to first place? Will it be championships again? Or will it be a little bit of a different, slightly sour ending to the Halo Infinite season for him? And I think it's very interesting to watch that progression, because there's no doubt that Tommy is still one of the best players in the game individually. It's amazing to watch him play from his POV, the shots he hits. But I think playing with a new group, new players, it's a new learning process for him and how he fits into that dynamic of Space Station Gaming. I think he hasn't got a long-term duo like a Trippy, who he instinctively knows what Trippy's going to do, and he can play off of that. It's a new stage of his career where he has to relearn a lot of what he might have had naturally to fit in with a new roster. And I think when we get to the end of this year, if Lucid is someone who's collected another chip this season, there's no doubt that Infinite will be his game. People will remember him as one of the faces of Infinite. But if he's not consistently making finals and SSG come up short all year, moving forward, how do you remember Lucid? Because everybody knows that recency bias is a horrible but very real thing.
Yeah.
And previous accomplishments can be forgotten about very, very quickly. So that's why I'm keeping my eyes on Lucid. I'm rooting for him. I think that he's going to have a big season still and a big impact on some big series, but That's my thought. And we'd love, again, for everyone who's listening right now to give us your thoughts either on YouTube or on social medias about who you think might be the player to watch and whose career could hinge upon this season.
Yeah, I agree. It's almost an unfair level of pressure on this year, it feels like, because, and Royalty, like you said, Royalty said it. It doesn't matter what you did before this. It feels like this is a whole new clean slate with a lot riding on it. And I agree. I feel like Lucid's got kind of this three-pronged fork in the road. He can end the year exactly where he is right now, still regarded as one of the best in the game and kind of always a contender for a top spot. He can kind of end it on top with world championships, or he could even, fall to a level where his placings are not as consistent as they've been. And they will have a big impact for sure moving forward.
All right, then. Well, that's going to do it for the first episode of the narrative for this season with a new format. We thank you so much for listening to our season kickoff. Make sure to subscribe on the podcast platforms if that's your kind of thing. Same can be said on YouTube. Leave a comment on, maybe give us your opinion on some of those questions we posed at the end of this episode. And Andy, it's once again almost time for us to pack and head to Arlington once more.
Let's do it. Let's get on an airplane.
Let's do it. All right. Thank you for listening, everybody. We'll see you in a few days.